Congratulations. Sorry, I came straight from work. Okay. Hello, and welcome to Hygiene Elevated Conversations and Innovations. Today we have with us the Tooth Fairy RDH, Felicity, and so we're going to be discussing her journey, her businesses, and hearing a lot of inspiration from her. So with that said, Felicity, I'm going to give you the floor. Share with us your journey. What inspired you to become a dental hygienist?
So it's funny. I feel like I've known from a very young age that I wanted to be a dentist, in fact. So from middle school, I grew up in a town with a vocational school. So I went there for high school and I got into the dental assisting program. And my senior year, I was able to work in an office as an assistant and really just get to know the dental office. I knew that I wanted to go to school and become a dentist. So I found a program that did dental hygiene and pre-dental. I figured it was just a good idea to have a backup plan. I didn't want to major in biology and then not get into dental school and not have something to fall back on. So it was the perfect option for me. And graduating school and realizing that it's just really difficult to apply to dental school while you're in dental hygiene school, I started working so that I could, sorry, I lost my train of thought, so that I could, work, make some money while I was doing the application process. And yeah, that's really what inspired me to become a hygienist. I think that the love for hygiene came after the fact, because my goal wasn't to become a hygienist.
That's my goal out of hygiene or out of high school was not dental hygiene. So it took a different path.
Yeah.
Well, I like how you said I didn't want to get stuck with a degree in biology, and that's literally what happened to my husband. He had a degree in biology.
Yeah.
And
great stories of like people becoming biology teachers and stuff, and I did not want that to be me. I knew that I wanted to make money right out of school too, like at least be able to work while I was in dental school. So yeah.
That's very practical. All those steps were very practical things.
Yeah, they're thought out.
I mean, that's strategy right there. So what kind of motivated you to start your businesses? Tell us about your businesses and then tell us kind of like why you decided to start those.
Yeah, so while I was in hygiene school, I still was working. I was waitressing and bartending. And I've always been interested in just like creating my own thing and making my own money in my own way, not working for somebody else. So I actually had a crystal business in hygiene school as well. I made like candles, I sold crystals online, and I wasn't very like into crystals and things like that. I feel like I just liked having supply and being able to ship it off. Like I enjoyed that whole process. I just wasn't sure exactly what my niche was. But it was a great start into, coming into the entrepreneurial field and being able to create my own product and keep up with supply and demand. I think the biggest reason that I started Tooth Fairy RDH is because I was so burnt out coming out of school. I obviously had a lot of loans to pay, and I'm like, I'm going to work 6 days a week and it's going to be fine. I'm just going to make a lot of money. And that lasted probably a month until I realized that this is not sustainable. Like I can't do this. I could barely, I was just so miserable. I would come to work and I was dreading being there. I was having trouble even talking to my patients. So about 3 months in, I'm like, I need to start doing things that I like to do or else I'm going to go crazy. Like I can't spend my life like this. And I couldn't study for the DAT or do any of that stuff because I was just so burnt out. And this was also making me second guess my decision to become a dentist because I'm like, this field is awful. Like, how can anybody work like this? So about 3 months in, I went to a convention, actually. It had nothing to do with dentistry, but it was just a bunch of entrepreneurs talking about things. And I was like, what was I happy doing? And funny enough, like I missed school. I missed learning. I missed going through my books and making study guides because I was the friend that always had the study guides. Like I liked designing them and doing pictures and things like that, like drawing things out. And I've kept my study guides like chapter by chapter. So I've had those and I'm like, what can I do with this? And that's when I kind of came up with the idea to put them on study cards. And from that day in the airport, I ordered all the things that I needed to start, and then I started.
That's so ingenious.
I love that. We have that in common, Felicity. Like, I just have an idea and I'm like, yeah, I'm doing that. Like, I don't know much about it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And
like ordered a $2,000 machine in the airport, even though like I just knew that I needed something.
So you love to create, like you're a visual person, but you love to create. And I mean, even going to a conference that wasn't even for your field, for entrepreneurs, like you were looking for that inspiration and I think a way to kind of get that creativity out. And I love that you managed to stay in dentistry because look at how you're contributing now to students. So, I mean, that was kind of the next question is how do you feel that your products contribute to the daily life of dental hygienists, but you're contributing to students for sure.
Yeah, I think it's frustrating that when you go into hygiene school, people tell you how hard it is. Like, I think that it's harder for some people for sure, but I don't think that it's necessarily hard, especially the learning aspect. I think that we just are not taught how to study and how to get this information. Like it's a lot of information, you know? And it's stressful, but it's not necessarily hard, you know? Like the material, you can learn it pretty easily. You just have to have the right resources. So I think one of the harder parts of hygiene school is clinic, and I wanted to create something that made clinic a little bit easier. So, because I think that when you're in clinic, you should be really focusing on your skills, not necessarily learning the material. And being in clinic and not being able to have like access to that chair side, I think was one of the hardest parts for a lot of people in school. And having a patient in your chair, you know, you only have so long to be with them. So you need to be able to access that right away. You don't have 10 minutes to go through all of your notes and everything to look for the one thing that you need. So that's why I think that having a card pack that takes you through the process of care is very convenient.
So when you created this, were you thinking more for students specifically in school, or were you kind of thinking after graduation? What was your focus at that time?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of both because I had just graduated and I needed something too, you know, like I just got out of school and I was having a hard time remembering like injection information, like just to feel comfortable doing it. Like it was in there, I know how to do it, but I need to feel comfortable and review the information prior, you know? So what was I doing is writing it down on a sticky note, whereas I've created this card that you can just keep with you all the time. You know, you're never going to lose it. You can wipe it down, disinfect it. So I think my target was new grads, even people in school, obviously, and even hygienists that have been practicing for years. It's good to review this information.
I think that's great because I have this memory being a new graduate and working in my first dental practice. The doctor passed me by my operatory and was like, "Hey, Joffrey, can you go do a palatal injection on my patient in like top 3?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I can do that." And so I had to like get up, go to the bathroom, and Google like what palatal injection, like what am I doing? Yeah. So you do need like this go-to like a resource, like resource as you're making that transition from student to clinician.
Definitely. And I think Google is great for a lot of things, but I find that when you're Googling things for dentistry, it's not the best. You can't get a direct information. You have to click on an article, go through it. It doesn't pop up the first thing that you search.
Oh, I know. Having like a little pocket deck that I could have just like flipped to and been like, okay, got it. And then walked over in that room. But I was like, oh my gosh, I have to figure out what palatal injection he's talking about.
I think even now with the change in the AAP, the perio guide, the staging and grading, for us older hygienists, like it's taken a while. So having that reference, like I have a little reference card that I got at a conference that I have in a drawer underneath my computer when I'm doing notes. Yeah, I need to reference that. So it's not even just new grads for sure, but those changes that are inevitably going to come about in, medicine, stuff's going to change. So I think it's smart. I mean, you see nurses with those big old tags, reference guides all the time. Why can't we?
Yes, exactly.
Total side note, going back to injections, my doctor let me do an interpulpal injection on Tuesday.
Oh, wow.
Never done one before.
Do tell. What even is that?
It's in the pulp. So we were doing an extraction, red-headed individual. So, difficult to get numb. I did 2 IAs infiltration. He was feeling pretty numb, but he was telling me his horror stories of dentistry. And so, I told Dr. Wagner I did 2 IAs. We were extracting a tooth. It was broke off at the gum line. So the pulp was visible. And he goes, well, I'll probably just do an interpulpal. Do you want to do it? And I was like, I've never done that. And he goes, you can do it. I was like, you're going to come over me, right? Because no, I've never done that. The texture was so weird. It was so weird. But when I was doing it, the patient was like, I felt that under my tongue. I was like, I was definitely not in your tongue. And he's like, I felt that. And I was like, oof. So
fascinating.
It was fascinating.
Thanks for sharing. That's really cool.
Thanks, Dr. Wagner, if you're listening.
Okay, Felicity, I want to know what challenges have you faced while developing and launching the products?
Yeah, so working a 40-hour week when I first started was tough because, like I said, I had bought this printer and I was selling a pack of cards that came with 15 cards. I was putting holes in them all by myself and just keeping up with supply, shipping out my product while working full-time was pretty tough. But I also feel like it was great because I kind of used it like a light at the end of the tunnel. Like I'm not going to have to do this for much longer. If I just keep working, I'm going to slowly cut off days that I'm working hygiene. And that's what I did. I went down from 5 days to 4 days to 3 days. And now I'm finally down to 2, which I think makes the job way more enjoyable. I don't dread going to work. I'm actually able to, build rapport with my patients. And I feel like that was my biggest challenge, is working while I was creating this product.
How long?
Oh, we do this every once in a while where we want to ask the question.
So many questions, following questions.
I know. Felicity, so is it still just you printing and hole punching all of the cards, or do you have help now?
Funny you ask. My little brother, he's 17 years old. He's in high school. He's now shipping out all my orders from back home, which is only an hour from me. So yeah, I'm bringing the family into business.
That's perfect.
That's growth. That's amazing.
So how long did it take you from the time you purchased your airport purchase of the $2,000 machine to really make your first sale? How long was that process?
So let's see. So I graduated December 2021. I started working in February 2022. I went to this conference in April 2022, and I officially launched my product in August 2022. So from there, by January, I found a supplier and I was no longer printing my cards with the machine. So I bought the machine in April 2022 and then I started in August. So in that time span, I was, getting everything ready. It was making my shipping bags, making a logo for my business, Instagram page, doing all that fun stuff. So it took a few months.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's so much. Do you sell primarily from like your website? Do you just do it from your Instagram? Were you on Etsy?
Yeah, so I work with somebody who had an Etsy account, and when we met, I still had my crystal business. So he kind of taught me the ins and outs of Etsy and all the fun stuff that goes behind the scenes. So when I created this product, he helped me a lot, with posting it, keywords and all that. So the first platform was Etsy, but I also did a website through Shopify.
Okay.
So those are the two platforms that I sell through.
That's perfect. How did it feel when you had like that first sale? Like, what was that like for you?
Oh, it was so fun. It's funny because I always look back on my Instagram. When I first started, I was making reels of me like packing orders and stuff, and it's so funny to look back at like how far you come in so little time. Because when I first started printing, I was encountering a bunch of problems. Like the cards wouldn't print dark enough. Like it was just very light, and the font was very small because I'm printing them on these little ID cards. Of course, like I'm trying to fit as much information as possible, but also make it so that the font is big enough for people to read.
Yeah.
But there's no YouTube videos on how to work ID printers. So it's kind of a lot of just trial and error. So when I made my first sale, I was so excited. I was actually going on vacation like the week after. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna launch it, it'll be fine. And then I got like 5-7 orders, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't go on vacation, but I already had this vacation booked to Portugal with my family. So when I came back, it was just like I was very excited to get back to business, like just print all my orders. And that was a complaint that I was getting for a long time, was my font was so light. And when I look back at the cards that I was printing, like you can barely read it, but I started somewhere, and now my cards are so clear, and I am very proud of them because it took a lot. That was like my biggest stressor in the beginning, because I'm getting bad reviews and I'm like, well, these people don't know me, like I'm putting in so much work and they're leaving me a bad review. Why don't you send me a message? Like it's showing up on my public platform and they can't delete it, and it's very discouraging.
It's hard getting that feedback. The first time that we were at conference and we had our t-shirts, getting that real-time feedback from people, it can be hard. It can be very, very hard, especially if somebody just doesn't get where you're coming from or whatever. They don't understand your creativity.
No, they don't get but I understand now, but it took a while because in the moment you're like, well, can you just leave 5 stars?
Well, and it's just shocking. Like you're putting yourself out there. You're like it's a very vulnerable environment to even put yourself in. And then to get this like negative response from people. I mean, because I was telling you before we started this episode of the negative responses I've gotten. And it's just shocking because I would never, ever in my wildest dreams show up somewhere and say something rude to somebody at on the floor. I would never behave that way. So I think that was the element of surprise, is I didn't know people were like that. And I was like, wow.
People are like that. A lot of people.
Especially online where there's no like face-to-face interaction, they will be them true selves sometimes.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it face to face. I was not expecting the face to face criticism. But and it's like you had to experience it so then you could grow from that and learn so much from it. Like,
Yeah.
So maybe I'm thankful that they were rude. I don't know.
Yeah. It makes you stronger.
It does. Okay, so you are in clinic 2 days a week. You're running your business the rest of the time. You have a team that's growing. Do you see yourself going back on that dental school trail, or are you seeing yourself staying more on like the entrepreneur trend? Like where do you see yourself going from here?
I'm still thinking about it. I'm not sure that I like working clinically, and I'm not sure that I want to spend that much money on dental school.
A lot of money.
It's a lot of time and energy. I think right now I've been in school my whole life. I went from high school to college, and then I started working. So even though it's been a couple of years, I feel like now I'm finally like getting to enjoy life a little bit. And I'm not sure I want to go back to the stress that school puts on you, especially when I know, you can make your own money however, like you can do anything that you want and you can make money that way. And it's not even about the money a lot of the times. It's just about doing something that doesn't feel like work, but also being able to live your life. And I think that working as a dentist, obviously there's ways to do it, but I'm not sure if it's for me.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's important to know, especially like the points you made. Dental school is not cheap, so that's a huge commitment to get into and know maybe this isn't for me before you make that. I worked with a dentist when I first moved up here to Utah. He very clearly did not like being a dentist. I think it was a lot more people-y than he thought and hands-on than he thought. And yeah, so.
And it is. That's the biggest part for me too, is I love interacting with people, but the right people, because I just get drained very easily, as I'm sure a lot of people do. But when people are coming to the dentist, they're filled with anxiety a lot of the times, which is understandable. No shade to the patients, but it's a lot. You see 9 patients in a day, and just absorbing all of that energy and then coming home, it's like my boyfriend will ask me how my day was, and I'm like, I can't even talk to you right now. Like I need an hour, like I don't want to live like that.
Yeah. My husband usually asks me, how was your day? And I'm like, if I can't show you a gross picture, then we can't talk about it.
Yeah.
It's grossed out very easily. So
I have a funny story to share with you guys. So like coming home, talking with my spouse about my day, and when every so once in a while there'll be a little bit of office drama occurring, right? And I'm like, you will not believe this, right? And then the next day, and then she did this, right? And I have like a story every day for him. And he one day stopped me and he says, Joffrey, I think the common denominator here is you. And I was like, actually I was felt personally attacked. And then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna like take a step back and stop complaining about work.
That's very real with him. At least like he's never lying to you.
Honest. Yeah. In fairness, her husband does not have a job that involves like more than 2 people. So he does not interact with people at all.
But he is very transparent with me, and you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe it is me.
You're the problem. There it is. Plain and simple. Okay, back on track.
I know. Well, and then I might real quick here, Felicity. I'm also thinking, you would be such an amazing educator at a hygiene
You
program.
think so?
Got, like all this tools on like how to remember, how to learn. Like you could like, I don't know, maybe that's something like down the road, something to consider because
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that because my whole life I'm like, I can't be a teacher. Like, I grew up with my younger brother, and trying to explain to him how to do his homework killed me. Like, honestly, I think it was because it was my brother, but I don't know. Maybe in the future. I feel like I've matured a lot since then, so it's definitely possible.
and you wouldn't be like teaching things to people you live with, right? It'd be like
Exactly. Yeah.
they're wanting to learn, they're
Yeah.
eager.
Literally paying for it.
It just seems like you have that like in you to help the next generation of hygienists and have all the resources and tools to help them like be successful like in boards and then in clinic, and providing that insight on like, you know, the truth of it. Like it's not totally glamorous in every aspect being a hygienist, but you can teach them how to like love what they're doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just see that in you, Felicity.
Oh, thank you.
So on that topic, like since you've been practicing like right at 2 years now, going from 6 days a week to 2 days a week, what kind of do you think are going to be some of the trends that you would kind of foresee in dental hygiene coming down the pipes?
I think that I feel like dentistry is very behind. I think that there's a lot of things that are to come. To say what they are, I'm not exactly sure, but I think dentistry, I feel like it's pushed right now that it's, you work 4 or 5 days a week and that's your regular schedule. But I think that it's going to come down to you work 3 days max, and it's more, or like half days. I feel like the scheduling is definitely going to be a lot different because we do a lot as hygienists, and I think that should be pushed more. Seeing a patient for an hour, we do so much, and I think that should be considered more. Especially, I think it has a lot to do with insurance companies too, paying, because that's the reason why, our bosses work us so hard, is because they're not getting paid that much, like we get paid based off of how much they get paid most of the time. So I think that it's just the burnout that needs to be addressed a little bit more.
I agree. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of talk of burnout going on right now, especially with new grads. And it took me back a little bit when you said I was burned out after graduation, like just so done with it.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that that's not something that's unique to just you, Felicity.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of students that are graduating just kind of already over it, and they're just fresh out of school, which is really sad.
It's so sad.
Dental hygiene has been really good for me. And I think something that Joffrey and I both, one of our visions for Hygiene Elevated is just how can we get new grads, not even just new grads, but hygienists to enjoy where they're at and being productive in what they do and find that joy. So we love it so much when we find, especially a fresh face like yours, contributing and making products that really do help and encourage hygienists to maybe not feel so alone in the op, especially fresh out of school. So I love that inspiration that you had. That's really unique, and just kudos to you for that success.
One thing I want to see change in dentistry is the way the office treats new grads. I felt really picked on as a new graduate.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt like people were, second guessing my decision on if the patient needed perio or not, almost like the office manager knew better than me.
Mm.
Because I'm a new graduate and she's been working there for so long. Like, clearly she knows if they have perio better than I would, right? And I also just felt like they were watching the clock, like timing me, like way more than they were the other hygienists. And that's something I would like to see change is these new graduates have like top-notch knowledge right now. They know way
They know.
more than the hygienist who's been there for a long time. Like, I just feel like they should be treated with a little bit more respect when they're joining the team. And I think that could help curb some of that like burnout frustration issues with the new graduates, is like getting that message across. Like, this person is like literally the smartest person in the room right now. Like, let's be nice to them.
Yeah.
They're not
I,
the
I,
fastest, but let's be nice to them.
yes. And I think it's not even about the education and how smart you are. I think it's about you're coming fresh out of school and they think that you have all this energy and you can work whenever, you can cover this person. And if you say something back, they're like, well, you just started, like you don't even know what's coming for you. That was a big one for me. Is, like I said, I was working 5 days a week when I started, and 1 month in, I couldn't take it anymore because I was supposed to only be working 4 days. There's some weeks where I was working 6 days, and my day off was finally approaching, and they're like, we need coverage for this day. And I'm like, I need a mental health day. And that was frowned upon, which I love the place that I work, but I think that part kind of got to me a little bit.
Yeah, that attitude towards your mental health doesn't matter. We need a butt in the chair is
Yeah.
not okay.
Yeah.
I've never worked that many days in a row in clinic. I mean,
Really?
Felicity, I have to share with you, I chose dental hygiene literally for the lifestyle. Like, I envisioned this glamorous life where I only worked part-time and it looked so beautiful and I wanted it. But then the entrepreneur in me was like, no, we're going to like do all these crazy projects and you're going to be working every single day all the time. But never have I ever spent that many days in a clinical setting. And I do 3 days in clinic right now. If I do a fourth, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be here. I am supposed to be doing something else right now. And I feel like I don't belong after that third day. I'm like, I
That's so funny because my mindset was very different going into it. I come from a family, my grandmother worked very hard, like raising my brother and I. And just seeing her work ethic, I think she just automatically gave that to me. So in school, I was running a business, I was working as a waitress, and then I come out and I'm like, wow, I'm making way more money. I'm going to work so much so I can pay off my loans and I can save up money for dental school. But I worked while I was in school, and I was more stressed working 5 days as a hygienist than I was when I was in school studying, working as a waitress, running another business, like I've never experienced burnout like that before.
Yeah, it is interesting. I remember when I was a student, I managed a coffee shop. It was only 2 days a week, but I managed a coffee shop. I covered the front desk at my church, which was like 4 nights a week. Basically, I got paid to study from 5 to 9. And then I house sat on the side. And then went to hygiene school, which was an insane amount of time. And it's like, I managed that so much better. And it was less physically exhausting on your
Yeah,
back. Yeah, it's interesting.
very.
So tell us, so you have more than just the reference cards, not just the reference cards, but we introduced ourselves basically through your socks. So we haven't talked about your socks yet.
Yeah. I've always been a sock person. I've always loved like socks. I don't know. My family gets me socks for Christmas. So like I said, I'm doing things that I love, and just putting on a pair of socks that you created just is different, you know? Like it's just a proud feeling. Like I wear them every day to work and I'm like, I made these, you know? Like, and nobody else has to like them, but I like them. So that's just the sock aspect for me. It just brings me joy, you know? It's not about the money. It's not about any of it.
What was your inspiration? Because your Instagram handle is Tooth Fairy RDH and your sock logo is a little tooth fairy. I don't want to say that's an obvious one for dental hygiene, but what was your inspiration kind of behind it?
Yeah, I think that we're all just tooth fairies, you know? Like I just think it's a fun concept. Like we're tooth fairies. I love it. I want everybody to feel, I feel like I don't want it to come off like I'm the tooth fairy, which I think a lot of people are like, oh, the tooth fairy. I'm like, no, we're all tooth fairies. This is just the company of tooth fairies, you know?
I love that, and I love the socks. Tell you, my daughter stole mine, and that's a huge compliment because she steals the things she likes. So
I'll have to send you guys some more socks because I have new colors.
we'll do that. We'll do a swap. I'll send you some of our you can
sock swap.
That sounds great.
So what are Oh, go ahead, Joffrey.
Okay, Amanda, I was going to tell you, I think we're going to be able to talk Felicity into a collaboration design for a t-shirt.
A little
I think we can brainstorm something very cool together.
Yes.
I'm about it. What, in your journey, as an RDH, as a Tooth Fairy RDH, what are some fun stories or a very memorable story that you have from your experience so far?
Yeah, so let me see. I feel like working clinically, I just delete those memories from my brain. Like I'll be talking with my hygiene friends like from school and they'll be like, oh, do you remember this instructor? And I'm like, no. I think my brain automatically just deletes things that were bad. So clinically, I don't have anything, but business-wise, I think last year, I guess, going to Nashville, that was my very first solo trip, like anywhere, taking a plane somewhere, staying in a hotel by myself. And it was my very first dental conference. You know, I did a small one here in Massachusetts. It was like a dental students, but it was only like 100 of them. So it was a lot smaller. I still set up a table and everything, but this was like a real conference that I was going to that you like pay to get into. And I think that was just like really challenging for me. I'm very shy when it comes to meeting new people, but once I know somebody and I know they have good intentions is when I open up. So making connections is not the easiest thing for me. But it's funny because my boyfriend is actually an entrepreneur too. And he is was very involved with my business to start. And he messaged a bunch of people through his Instagram. He like was doing a consulting type thing too. And he did help me like grow a lot. He taught me a lot of the things that have to do with business because the business part wasn't so fun for me. It was more of the creating. So it was helpful to have somebody behind it that, you know, was able to teach me and walk me through a lot of the things. But he had messaged a bunch of people who had a following on Instagram in the dental hygiene field, which I had no clue about. I found out because somebody had sent me a message saying that he's a scammer because, of course, his messages sounded super scammy, saying like, oh, Tooth Fairy RDH like wants to work with you, blah, blah, blah. So he actually made me a couple great connections through that, because then I started talking to these people after about how funny it is that he reached out to them. So I started talking with the Latina RDH, Amber. I don't know if you guys know her. And she told me about RDH under one roof. And I wasn't sure that I was going to get a table, but I knew that I was going to go. So about 6 months before, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to get a table. So I reached out to the people who run it, and it was very complex because they're sending me these like brochures about buying a chair and a table, and you have to add things and pick your flooring. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like, I'm bringing a tablecloth and my cards. Like, that's all I know. So it was just a very confusing process. It was a lot of back and forth with the guy. And once traveling alone is hard enough, but when you're bringing supplies with you, that was pretty challenging. So I shipped off about 3 boxes, and I still ended up bringing 3 luggage with me. And just like getting through the airport with all my luggage, and I was thinking I was going to sell more than I did too. I think like I had very high hopes for my product, and I was like, I'm coming home empty-handed, and that was just not the case. I worked the booth all by myself, you know, like the whole days. And it was just very draining, you know. I feel like that was a very humbling experience for me. People, it was just like a lot of older hygienists, so they were coming by my booth. I was telling Joffrey before, and they were like, oh, well, I don't really need this product because I've been a hygienist for this long, and I've been a hygienist for this long, but it's a great idea. So it's just like a lot of me repeating myself, and then I actually changed my whole, I guess you could call it, sales pitch by the end of it. And I'm like, well, it's great for patient education. Why don't you just show your patients the images while they're waiting for the doctor? But I think that was probably the most challenging experience for me. Yeah.
One thing, Felicity, I have found, so you mentioned at Under One Roof, there was an older audience for hygienists. What I have found is that at those smaller state component sessions, like for us, we have UDHA, the Utah Dental Hygiene Association, is like full of students. Like the students are required to go and attend that event. And perhaps that's your niche. Maybe that's where your cards are supposed to be at, is at the student ones, the ones where the are required. Because that when we were at the UDHA, Amanda and I were asking them some questions about the podcast. We wanted to know like what topics do they want to listen to, like what we're just trying to like cater to the hygienist. Basically, that's what we were doing there, was research. You know, what do we want to, what are we supposed to talk about on the podcast? And we were getting like, well, I don't know, I'm just a student. I don't. And we're like, no, you do know. Like, tell us. Deep. There's an answer. I know it. So we were having like kind of like the reversed problem at our last convention.
And I think that's why I went into the RDH Under One Roof with so much hope and confidence, is because a few months before that, I did do a state conference, and it went so well. I feel like almost every student there bought my cards, and it was just amazing, you know, like it made me very happy, you know. So I was like, I'm bringing as much product as I can fit, you know. I don't care if I have to drag this to Nashville, I'm doing it. And leaving there, you know, with all of my bags, it's like, wow. I needed it though. I needed to be humbled.
Well, I mean, maybe, but also like I just love that mindset. Like you owned it, you believed in it, you were going to do it. Like, you have to believe in yourself if you're
Yeah.
going to start anything outside of the clinic. Like, if you don't believe in yourself, like, you have no chance at succeeding.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
All right, shall we close up with our 2 last questions, Amanda?
I think so.
Okay, Felicity, we end every episode with the same 2 questions. So I'll ask the first one. What do you wish you would have learned in school that has taken you years to learn as a hygienist?
So I wish I would have learned more about burnout. I don't regret anything that has happened. I feel like everything happens for a reason, and I'm not sure that I would have created this product if it wasn't for me being so burnt out, because I use that as my motivation. So I think that I wish that I was more informed on burnout, though, because I was down bad after a month of working hygiene, and it's sad, it's sad that a lot of people go through that, because sometimes, this wasn't my dream job. I do love hygiene, but I didn't dream about being a hygienist for the rest of my life. And for some people, it is their dream job. And it's sad that, you spend so much time in school and you put so much time and energy into that. And then you come out and you feel like this isn't for me, but I truly believe that that's not the case. I think that we're just pushed too much. I think that hygiene is so much more enjoyable when you do it a lot less and in the right circumstances. So, yeah.
On your terms, basically.
Yes. Yes.
Second question. What piece of advice do you wish you could go back and give yourself as a new grad?
Don't take it so serious. Yeah, it's going to be fine. Just don't take things personal. Don't take things so serious. I feel like seeing patients and them being mean to you, you just can't let it get to you. You kind of have to build this rough skin. So I wish that I had a little bit more of that graduating.
It comes with experience.
Yeah, it comes with experience. I did
I'm
not have
still
that
learning
for
it.
years.
Yes.
No, Felicity, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciated having you on the show.
This was